Bret Burchard and me, your host, James. Welcome.
Did it right.
Yeah, man, I'm working on it.
Did you say Chris wrong in my name? Is that what just
That's right,
we'll get
It's 50-50.
Hey, man, things are good. It's the holiday season, so I've been my kids are laughing at me because I've been waiting by the door for my wine orders to arrive. And I got 2 cases yesterday, and my daughter was like, she was like, Dad, you were down there for a while organizing your wine. Like, was that a special moment for you? And then I cracked open a bottle last night, and I might be a little fuzzy, Bret. That might be why.
That's awesome. Is this a holiday tradition now? Like holidays roll around, you get your wine shipment, and
yeah, it's a year-round thing for me, but it's special now because I don't like to drink wine unless there's something to celebrate. And man, I'm feeling like, especially now coming out of the last 8 or 9 months and moving into next year, we see some light. I'm feeling like celebrating. So it was funny. I just something clicked in me, and I just ordered a couple cases, and it was just time. Yeah, because it was really austere for the last 8 months or 9 months for me.
Yeah, that's awesome that you do that. My last coaching staff, when I was coaching in the G League, we had a deal where we had to find something to celebrate every day. Like, the season can be so long and so grueling, and we know we're going to lose a bunch of games, and we're going to start hating each other, and we'll hate our player. Like, just frustration. Boy, just like every day, find something to celebrate. So that's cool. Even in 2020, like, there's something we can celebrate. Let's find it and do that. So,
yeah,
that's cool to do that.
What was the weirdest thing you ever celebrated?
I don't know. I mean, some days it's silly stuff, like, whatever, this player showed up on time, or, hey, I got a free smoothie this morning at the smoothie joint, whatever it is. But, you find something.
I dig it. I mean, that's a great way to make meaning. Great way to make meaning. Speaking of making meaning, assuming you guys had good Thanksgivings, Jimmy, what about yours? Anything cool happen? Go anywhere with your kids?
Well, what
a
setup, man. What a setup.
Pins and needles. I want to know if the hike happened.
No, I took 9 days. Beth and I both committed taking 9 days off. So the 2 weekends in the week, and we did a few things here and there, but mostly unplugged, and it was cool. But it was interesting too to try to stay disciplined around COVID and the kind of separation and stuff. So, we went to see my folks, but outdoors with masks and so forth. And I remember during that moment with my folks and my daughters, and I went to see them twice, once 2 days in a row, which is weird. We don't usually do that. And I remember thinking to myself, they're socially distant. We're socially distant. They're safe. We're safe. Why can't we have more for Thanksgiving? And we didn't. We just had the 5 of us. And yesterday, I got the news that my dad was diagnosed with COVID. So it was really interesting how, I'm starting to feel good about the future. I've started thinking about letting down my guard, and all of a sudden, my dad gets diagnosed. No symptoms yet, but just an interesting lesson. And a lesson in discipline for me. But that week we did take a page out of Bret's book and go to a park, and we attempted to do some hiking. And I was telling Bret that, wherever we go, we have to bring my mother-in-law. She lives with us. She's 86. She is in a wheelchair. She can get around, but not off road. So, picture us getting out of the car with, the 4 of us, my wife, me, my wife, my 2 daughters, my mother-in-law, and a dog. Put my mother-in-law in the wheelchair, and then we're kind of cruising around the park. And we decided to go off-road. And the first issue is, can you push your mother-in-law through the mud? Yeah, no problem. And then we get to a sign that says no dogs allowed, and so we have to about face and get out. So it's like, unprepared. The spirit was there, but we were unprepared, man, for what we found.
How do they do? This is a team question for me. It's a family question. How do they do when the plan gets thrown off? If they're really excited about it.
Yeah. I think they're pretty cool. They're pretty chill. I mean, it's funny. Kids will be chill in the moment, and then they'll like throw it back in your face like a month later or something. Like we were planning a trip. We were planning a trip overseas, and it didn't happen because of COVID. And like my daughter a couple of days ago threw it back on my wife in my face. This idea that we can't plan for anything or get anything done. It's like, what? But so my kids they're chill in the moment, they roll, but you never know when you're going to get, the reminder of how you screwed up. And I think half of it's serious and half isn't, but
yeah,
I've
experienced some of those. You never. I think the same thing is with team. I mean, it's like it gets off track. You can get back on track, but there's going to be a perception of that moment later. And to a fault, I can anticipate that and try to influence, even too much control that perception. I'm worried about that resentment or misunderstanding. I mean, even leading teams, I notice this. So it's not just family. Like, okay, this just happened. Can everybody get back on track? We sync up. Okay. But where's that going to cause a problem 3 steps down the road? And that is not the best use of my time or energy. I can dedicate a little bit to it, but when I try too hard, it makes the moment then that was off track even worse. You made it worse, Chris. You didn't make it better. That's a situation for me. Crazy, man. It's just weird. It's going to be weird stories for everyone for a while. The world's weird. It's just different. And I think for me, I see so many people, struggling with trying to get back to something that was. And I've felt it with our kids, man. It's real stuff. Bret, you guys just hung out the house there, simple, right?
Yeah, we kept it simple. Just my wife and I, and her aunt came over. We did it on the front porch, and this is actually my first Thanksgiving at home in probably 4 or 5 years. So it was kind of cool to, and I was relating to your park story, Jimmy. How you were talking about, you told me before we started just how you had to stay on an agenda, like you could just go hang out at the park. But like my wife and I had a day where we just went to the park, took our dog to the dog park, and no clocks, no phones, nothing. We just sat at the park and until we didn't feel like being there anymore and left with no agenda. So it was cool to get that time.
That's what I do. I get into a mode at the end of the day and I'm like, all right, I'm like the dude from Big Lebowski, no agenda. I get a little bit of that every day. Well, and I think that's where people, a friend of mine had started something called No Agenda, where it was this opportunity to connect and hang out. People are so tired of always having the agenda. All the type A, super productive, efficient people like me that can over program things. I've learned the hard way not to do that. It doesn't always have to have point to it or that flow to it. It can be, we have to have these different spaces. And that's what makes a healthy team, a healthy company, a healthy family. Lots of different spaces you're moving in and out of. And right now, so many people's experiences, it's just a reduction down to just a couple of different spaces, 2 spaces, 3 spaces. And I don't mean just physical. That's a part of it. It's also what it means emotionally and mentally. Because I found that for myself over the holiday. I'm so excited on some stuff you guys know I'm working on, but I just took that work up to the sunroom and was around the sky and had my pad of paper and would just brainstorm. I would noodle and but just being in a different space with it opened up different ideas and different thoughts. And
right.
I'm really, really, really excited about that. What are you thinking about as you get ready for 2021, Jimmy? I love to hear that you're excited. There's vision. I could talk too enthusiastically. I'd have to tamper myself for the stuff that I'm feeling. What for you in your own personal growth, if you were to think about like a word that you would give to 2021, what would that look like?
I mean, I think the word would be focus. The word would be focus. And, it comes out of, this real super intense 8 or 9 months of trying to deal with, and then also kind of lead conversations that would bring people out of the shitstorm that we were in. And, but then not just surviving, but how do we thrive? And so it's been a super, super intense process of trial and error, investment and success, investment in lessons. And now I think the year is coalescing, the future is coalescing around some really key ideas. And that's what I'm excited about. To invest in those ideas and with a laser focus, make it work, make it successful, have more impact, all the things that we look forward to doing. So I'm really looking forward to that rocket ship starting now, taking off next year. It'll be a lot of fun.
I love that word, coalescing. It's coalescing. That's exactly what it feels like. I was overthinking it a little bit for sure, which I'd messaged you that, Jimmy, it just kind of like got simple after that. You can see, and I think this is a process that philosophers have talked about it, of change. There's a simplicity, that you show up to solve a big problem, but you really don't understand all the complex variables. You walk through it enough times, you understand the complexity that's really there. But if you're really going to be an effective guide on that journey, you have to do the work to get to that simplicity on the other side of that complexity so you can reduce it down. Right. And, like I was right on the end of that complexity phase, and I was just staying there a few days too long. I don't like to be a few days behind. I want to be right where I want to be.
Well, how did you know you were there too long, and how did you break out of that?
Well, I went for a walk, and on the sidewalk, a dog urinated, and it just said simple. And I was like, what the heck? The freaking sign. Sorry, I banged my desk, and it was not good audio-wise. So I think I've learned as a process and a pattern, when I'm right at that edge of the alchemical, creative journey, and it's like right when you start just forcing a little bit, you're right at that edge, and you either need to set it down and come back to it later, because you're not going to get any good work done. You're going to overthink things, or it needs to go into a new phase. Well, I had set it down a number of times already, and so it was ready to go into a new phase. And part of it was our text, and part of it was going on a walk. The sun kind of broke through the clouds here, and I hadn't been running or outside in a while, which is sad. You guys got to help me with that. I want to make sure I'm running regularly again, because I did Sunday, and it was like my brain got washed with joy. When that happens, I'm not annoying to my family at all. I'm walking around the kitchen being like, I feel like Beyonce. I don't know what she feels like, but in my mind, that's what it feels like after I do a 6-mile run. But the clouds have broken, and the sun was coming through, and I'm out walking around and just really setting it all down, getting into an ease and a flow with it. There's such a finesse between wrestling with something and forcing it. And, I think about that as a speaker. How does this talk want to show up? Plenty of people aren't giving a talk that they've sat in the depths with long enough. Sometimes they've sat too long. Where's that fine line between, I'm not going to force this, but there is something showing up here that wants to live and breathe and talk to us. Stories, man. Cool. Stories. That's cool. So, feeling like Beyonce. That's the title of this week's episode.
Feeling like Beyonce.
Do you know the traffic hits we would get just for that? They would watch for or listen for like the first 30 seconds.
And never come back.
And be like, what is even? This is nothing to do with Beyonce.
So, Bret, how about you, man? What do you, how about you? What are you looking forward to in 2021? Or what are your thoughts when you think about the year to come?
Yeah, I think where I'm sitting in it with myself, and then with people I'm connected to and trying to serve and help, is I'm seeing so many people like, let me just hang on and get through this, you know, and let me just get through to the other side. And I think it's a mistake. I think it's a low performing place to be. I think when you approach like hard things that way, or especially this hard thing, which we think it's just going to be over, like, you know, my wife's family is pretty worried about COVID, some health issues in the family, and they're like, well, let's just get to the end of the year and then we'll get together. It's like, well, it's not just the calendar flips and all of a sudden everything's going to be better again. Like, we got a long journey ahead of us, and as Chris, you mentioned, like, there's no new normal. Like, it's not going back to the way things were. And I think I see a lot of people just like holding on for dear life and trying to get to the other side. And my concern for them is you're putting a ton of stress on your mental toughness to be able to survive. Mm-hmm. And even if you do survive, as Jimmy, you said, you're not surviving, we're thriving. Even if you do survive, like, this experience is going to shape you in some way. And so I'm trying to help people be more intentional about how we experience what we're going through. Like, we're not just going to hold on and survive it, because we'll probably end up worse off than we were before. How do we lean into it? How do we be intentional about our growth and use the experiences to our advantage? And we're going to come out of it on the other side even better than we were before we all started. Or even if it's not a comparison, better or worse, but we're going to be, like you said, Jimmy, thriving on the other side of it, maybe in a new reality, in a new vision, and a new place. But we're not just going on and try to get through it, because we're going to be different. We're going to change because of this. And so, we can let it change us, or we can change because of it, and become the person and the people that we want to be on the other side. So that's where I'm at going into 2021. Like, how can we be more intentional about our growth in the midst of chaos and challenges and obstacles?
I love it, man.
Yeah. I'm curious, Bret, who are the folks that you're serving? Who are the folks you're working with, and that you think about when you talk about this this decision?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of it's leaders and high performers. In my world, it's in the sports world with coaches and athletes. And I think everyone's kind of like just trying to get through the season, and then next year we'll be back on our normal calendar, our normal schedule.
Right.
And what I'm trying to articulate to them is, all right, you can just buckle down and get through the year, but how you lead your program or your team over the next 5 months is going to have effects that trickle into 21-22 season. Like, how you manage this, even if records aren't the same, and tournaments aren't the same, and playoff finishes aren't the same. Like, all that stuff is going to have an asterisk next to it. But who your team becomes because you've done this season, or who your program becomes because of how you handled this season, is going to impact who your program's going to be at 21-22 and years after. So don't wait a moment. Let's grow and become better because we did it.
Yeah.
And how to not let the stress of expanding, of challenging, make sure it's eustress, not de-stress, and gets in our bodies physiologically so that it traumatizes us. Because you hear people that go through disruptive things that expanded them, that they made it through and even got better from it, but without attention to the physiological factors, it ends up traumatizing them and calcifies them really at that next level, because they're afraid afraid to ever feel that feeling again.
Mm.
And that's something I'm thinking about lately, is to make sure calcification doesn't happen, because I could feel how it could. I mean,
Yeah.
I had gotten beyond some suffering that was a part of my life, you know, in 2008 and 9, and then 2020 brought it all back, you know, in some ways. And you gotta, it's not starting over, but you're making major changes, and you can do it out of fear, you know, you can do it out of fear. And if there's going to be some fear there, but as long as the majority of it isn't fear, and I'm checking myself before I wreck myself on heart and vision, you know, that's been super important to me.
Chris, what's an example? I'm sorry, Bret. What's an example of something that could create this calcification? Like, what's an example of this physical manifestation of the stress that related to change that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. Well, so a practical example for me, and this is I used to review these mindsets, and my internet just went weak. So if it goes really bad, you can just tell me. But I used to review these mindsets every day. So it's what Figure That Mindset Out, that course is on, and the writer book. And there's a statement in those. And the reason I don't right now is because they're just such a part of me. I mean, I can almost state them verbatim. But there's a statement in one of them that captures it perfectly. And so you can think about it economically. We'll make it practical for people. When you're starting over, as I hit bottom 2008 and 9, and then you economically get wiped out. Dude, I can remember like putting $10 of gas in our minivan and having like $20 to spend in the grocery store. And so you've got to expand to get beyond that moment. But what happens for a lot of people is like, I am never going back there again, right? And they're just so afraid and they calcify from it. Well, I got beyond it, but in 2015 needed to launch out again full time into what I'm doing now. In 2014, excuse me. Well, people were afraid for me. Like, you were in that place and you were hustling for groceries. You don't have anything to launch out in this full time, because I didn't. And I was like, I know, I don't want to be there, but I know that I have to do this. If I don't do this, I'm not taking the next step that I need to be taken. So as I took that step, you know, it has been year after year of growth, and very rewarding. There's still been moments where I've had to ask for help, but overall, and then 2020 was like a sucker gut punch at the same time. And what I could be like is, oh, I don't want to get back to that place again, and start moving with energy, purpose, and focus out of fear. And it would get me beyond where I am. And you're going to have some fear. I just want to make sure I'm moving with energy, focus, and purpose out of vision, out of joy, out of abundance. And I have to check my own BS on this often so that it doesn't calcify. Now, how is that in a mindset statement that I find really powerful? I want to have the courage to build the perfect business and break it when I need to. It's both and.
Mm-hmm.
It takes courage to do both. Not just to break it to be sadistic, you know.
Right.
But
break it because it needs to upgrade.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Jimmy's got coy thoughts going through his head right now.
Yeah, you can see it spinning.
Precociousness.
Yeah, some of us do that just because it's who we are. I mean, you just described kind of the last, 14 years of my life. Yeah.
I am a victim of my own vision.
It's exactly. It wasn't anything. I didn't break it on purpose, or I didn't break it because I wanted to break it. I broke it just because I got curious about something else. So that's kind of like what's been happening. And I think that's when I talked about focus at the top of the show. That's really what I've got now is, I kind of recognize that tendency that I have to. It's not to be kind of mesmerized by bright, shiny objects, but it's close. And, instead of kind of like bouncing without purpose, maybe being more discerning about the shifts that I make. But yeah, man, that, building the perfect business and then breaking it, when you do that, because that's how you're built, and then you realize it, that can be a little bit of a rude awakening.
Well, and I definitely believe in the next era, with everything in me, there's going to be a cruising altitude to lock in on.
Right.
I mean, you're still improving pieces, and parts, but that structurally there's something to lock in on, which is the coalescing, right? Which is everything, the stuff that we're all talking about, behind the scenes that I can't wait to share. That coalescing is that structural altitude lock-in. Even if the wording changes or the package or the structure or the unique selling proposition, whatever marketing language you want to use, it's still a level of impact, a level of deal flow, a level of whatever phrases people want to use, a magnitude beyond what it has been.
Right.
Mm.
Right. Well said. Well said.
Ready to fly.
That's good stuff.
That was my drum. This is going to be my sign when y'all say something that I can't wait to comment on, and I got to get it out of my body so that I fully listen to you. I'm just going to go like that, and then I'm going to be able to fully listen because I've expressed myself, and we can come back around. Bret, what for you when you think about stepping into so many new experiences the last few months and putting yourself out there more and more? And I know you're living this right at the edge, and I know you value that growth that happens at the edge of your abilities. Do you ever have a moment where you feel like you're churning on it too hard and you need to set it down? Or do you feel like your rhythms of volleyball and hiking and all that kind of keep you pretty grounded as is?
Yeah, the activity definitely helps. I know, just going to launch a new course here in a couple weeks, and in the process of working on that, those rhythms of activity really helped, like, break it open. You work on it, you struggle through it, you maybe get stuck, and then I set it down and go get active. And it just really opens it up for me, whether it's the hiking with my wife and dog, or whether it's mountain biking, like you mentioned, the volleyball and the tennis, that kind of stuff. Like, all the activity just helps me relax and come at it from a new place. So yeah, but what you said was so true. Like, the balance of the struggle between, are you wrestling with it? Or are you forcing it? And being able to recognize when I'm trying to force something. I think that's what's really grown in me the last few years, is an awareness of when I'm trying to just force my own willpower, or something that just isn't quite right, or what needs to be said, or what it really needs for this moment. Setting that down, let it go, and then come back with the wrestling, with finding the sweet spot. So yeah, there's definitely times to, when I feel like it in my brain and in my body that it's becoming too forced and too stressed, set it down. You don't do your best work under too much stress. So set it down and come back to it, for sure.
And I'm trying to anticipate a vision of the future where I can force people to get ready for that vision and accept it now, so we're ready when we get there, which is too preemptive. In some moments, we're talking about the forcing moments. Some moments it's the right thing to do. I'd be curious, Bret, for you, is it sometimes imposing or forcing more discipline on the situation, whether it's from you or the discipline you wish another person had?
Yeah, that's what it comes back to me. Comes back to me a lot is the discipline piece. And I find that when I get stressed or vulnerable, or feel like things aren't working, the answer is always like more discipline, more structure. And so what I've learned, and this is just true for me, it's not true for everybody, but what I've learned about myself is sometimes it needs to be less discipline. Like, let it go a little bit. Let yourself, as we said, Jimmy, don't follow the agenda for one day, and just see what happens. Like, see what comes out of it. So yeah, it's definitely the yin and yang for me.
No
Yeah,
one's innovating.
it reminds me of we talk a lot about this idea of taking control of growth, and the assumption in that statement is that we understand that oftentimes to regain or to gain control, you have to give up control, right? So it's like we tend to squeeze harder or try harder, or force. The word force things, be more forceful, collect and exert more power, more authority. Why? Because I said so. We tend to push harder, and the more we push, the less control we have, the more energy we create that's actually working against us. Yeah, so it reminds me of that concept. And so and then it brings us back to this idea that we've talked about in the past. And I think, Chris, you might say it differently, but this idea of just finding that balance. And I know that you'd probably use a different word, but for me, it's this idea of kind of finding that sweet spot. And maybe, Bret, this is where flow exists for you, but kind of being aware of all the signs that can warn you that you're stepping out of that sweet spot, out of that flow, out of that balance. Just being aware of those and paying attention to those, and then knowing how to respond and then being able to respond, when the warning signs are there. Is that all it takes?
That would be amazing.
Simple as that.
Well, it's the sales phrase, got to make it rain, right? If it were that easy with effort, you're making something a reality that wasn't a reality. That takes everything that you have, depending on whatever that reality is. If it's a reality of changing your physical health, it's going to take this much. If it's a reality of choosing a less reactive place to be in a conversation, it's going to take maybe this much. If you're envisioning a different way for your business to thrive in 2021, it's probably going to be this, that the scale of what you're trying to accomplish equals the pain of that effort.
Yeah.
At least
and the point of balance shifts then along with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Well, and I think, that's what gets me excited. I have to tamper that excitement down for what I think can change in society, but I also don't want to make it sound like I'm riding high and it's easy, because it is.
Right.
2020, I would say, I've had a few defining eras where I feel like I lived a lifetime in a period of like a year,
right?
7 months to a year and a half. And that's been done twice. And you have two of those and you're like, sweet, I'm going to get that cruising altitude now. And now I'm doing a third one, but each one is better, less suffering, based on the work that I did leaning into the pain in the hard previous ones.
Yeah.
Right.
That's for sure. That it's reaping a dividend and a return from all the hard choices when nobody was watching. Which isn't that what courage is, right? Making that choice when it's the least, it's the path. It goes against most the path of least resistance.
Right.
And that's the beauty of what you said earlier about like not letting it calcify, where you go through these hard experiences and then say, oh, I'm never going back there again. But like navigating through the hard experiences, letting them shape you, and you become something because you went through it. But it's not a callus there that that you're trying to avoid for the rest of your life. It's, if I have to go back through that, I know what the experience is like. I know how to do it. And because I've been through it before, I'm going to become even better because of it. So I can feel that pain or that struggle, go through that again. And it's going to upgrade me again. It's not going to be just deja vu or Groundhog Day, but I'm going to upgrade again. Even if I have to go through it again. but only if you don't calcify from the first time you experience it.
I mean,
Growing
this is
through it,
why,
helping you.
yeah, this is why people lock in at that, that place of growth, and they don't realize how much their imagination is limited by what they see. So people see a middle class suburban life and make that the aspirational goal, and then they get two incomes developed to a certain skill level that supports that, and they're locked in. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, there are days. There are days. Oh, let me tell you, there are days. But by and large, I know if I, when I'm in that place, I can enjoy that for what it is, but something starts to awaken.
Right.
To what's next?
A lot of business owners do the same thing, Chris. They start off with, all I want to do is pay my bills. That's the definition of a successful company is, paying your bills or making a small profit. And then, the bar stays there. The bar never really gets beyond a fear-based survive my bills. And it never steps into a vision of what more it could be. So I see the parallels for personal lives as well as for, business, professional lives. It's really interesting.
Everybody stops somewhere, and I don't want to stop here. It's good. I can enjoy it. There are parts of it that are painful. I know that if I could resolve any circumstances that cause me pain, there would still be vision that would take me beyond. And that's what, without, hope, right? Without vision, there's no meaning. That's where we lose our way. And I think this has just been hard for this year, shakes up what you think and believe about the world. And it shakes up your perspectives. And it's why there's going to be a decade of innovation. It's going to be crazy because there are plenty of people that are being shaped by it in a powerful, beautiful way. For me, for people that go on the journey of wrestling with vision and trying to make a change and working against, you're fighting entropy, right? I mean, it's the law of the universe that's working towards the water flowing down the rock in the path of least resistance. And you're directly going against that. And there's ways that you can cooperate with what's happening to make it better for you, better for your world. But there's still going to be a turn at one moment where, am I crazy? And
Yeah,
we all are, if we're following that path.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I think you just summarized or just gave me a insight into the summary of our theme for today, man. Very interesting. Yeah, because this idea of path of least resistance reminds me of what Bret was talking about, where we're just trying to survive, right? We're in survival mode. The experience that you're having, Bret, with the folks around you, looking to just survive. So, and they view the decision as, allow me to find the path of least resistance. Whereas the folks that respond to what we've been seeing with vision, right, aren't thinking about resistance. They're actually letting go. They're actually experiencing maximum acceptance, which allows them to be curious, to find that new path, that way to level up to that new vision that is formed based on the disruption that occurs around them. So are you looking for the path of least resistance, or are you looking for that path of maximum acceptance? Resistance driving that complacency or that victim mentality, I'm going to survive whatever is thrown at me, versus that maximum acceptance, which says I'm going to thrive within the environment that's thrown at me. One lets go, gives up control to gain control. The other tightens our control and actually causes us to lose control. And then to Chris's point, we can choose a path, and the danger there is to allow ourselves to calcify or to be kind of like cemented into any one of those, either of those paths, which can be dangerous as well, allow us to be less flexible, less adaptive.
And if the path requires me to to risk my ego in any way, like, that's a powerful signal. If my path requires me to get back up again, that's a powerful signal. And if my path somehow makes me more vulnerable and open-hearted to connect to others, and those three things, when they're present, because you can get caught up in your own hype, you can get caught up in your own BS, right? When those three things are present, it's a clue to me that path of least resistance is opening up in a clear way. A couple of big changes we made with SiteShift from 2015 to 2019 was about it going, oh, it's not about Chris being the center or the star. I wasn't like actively trying to build it that way, but as if I'm secure in who I am, my desires flourish in that space. It began to be more about how can I help the other person impact other people. And that vision was already there in some ethereal form from like 2012, but it kept getting crystallized more and more and more, through that process. So you don't know. I see a cruising altitude for what we can do, what we've got in our hearts and minds. And if we follow that path with courage, and we're smart with leverage, it's going to happen faster than we think. And then what's after that? So what would the title of the episode be?
I'm going to let Bret summarize it.
Title of the episode would be Following the Path of Least Resistance to Becoming Your Best Beyonce.
Boom. He worked in Beyonce.
That's a tip of the hat to you, Chris.
A flip of the hair to you, Chris.
That was laser.
All right. Well, it's been excellent. Thank you for investing the time, guys, and thank you for you all for listening in. This has been Breaking Brains and Building Hearts. We will see you again next week. Enjoy your week and be safe.